How affordable is a college education today? What is the federal student aid program? And how can it help college-bound seniors and their parents? We'll address these questions and more coming up in this edition of The Chat Room. Welcome to The Chat Room. I'm your host, Frank O'Gara, and joining me today is Ms. Stephanie Gross, a senior-level management and program analyst at the Office of Federal Student Aid, United States Department of Education. Ms. Gross has broad knowledge of the federal student aid programs and federal aid application process. Ms. Gross currently works in the area that designs, develops, and implements the free application for federal student aid, commonly known to students and parents as Fafsa. Welcome to the chat room, Stephanie.
Thank you, Frank. I'm pleased to be here this morning.
Well, we're absolutely thrilled to have you here, and the timing is perfect because this is the time of year when our military families and our seniors in our high schools are starting to look at the whole college application process and not only wondering about how to apply for college, but how they're going to pay for it as well. So,
yes.
And we've got 3,200 seniors in 47 schools around the world that are wrestling with this whole process right now. Why don't we begin, Stephanie, by just taking a look at the question about how affordable is college for families, and in particular our military families today?
Well, Frank, college is affordable for anyone. Anyone with a desire to pursue a post-secondary education can make that dream a reality. Now, primarily, the cost of a post-secondary education is the responsibility of the family. However, there are many sources of aid to assist families in paying for that education. I'll start with talking about federal aid first. The federal government offers grants, loans, and college work study to help families pay for the cost of education. Grants is money that is, we call it free aid money, that does not have to be repaid. Of course, loans would have to be repaid, but again, while the student is in school, no payments are required, and after the student graduates, there is a 6-month grace period, and then they would begin repayment on those loans. And then there's a college work study program where the student can actually work and earn money to pay tuition, and that money does not have to be repaid. So those are federal sources of aid. And then there are states that offer grants and loans as well. It depends on the state that the student resides in or the state that they choose to go to school in. Many states offer aid to help families. Also, some schools actually have money that they award to students. And then, of course, we encourage students to do scholarship searches, because scholarships actually is free money that students can receive from different organizations. And we even encourage families that the stores that they shop in, ask for scholarship applications, because many of them offer scholarships and families don't know about that aid. So, ask for those scholarship applications, apply for those scholarships, and get that money.
So I know this is a really scary thought for parents and for students, because when our parents watch the news, they watch the television or read in the newspaper, the myriad of stories that are out there about the escalating costs of college, they get concerned. But your message is that it is affordable and that there are ways out there to help families, and I think that's an important point, and I appreciate you bringing that to the table. Now, it is a maze. My head was swimming with all of the options that you just mentioned. Where do families begin with this process?
Well, it all begins with the free application for federal student aid. That is the starting point. So
is that
all
the FAFSA, what people call it?
That is the FAFSA application. And that is the starting point. So all of the aid that I just mentioned, the federal aid, state aid, institutional aid, even some scholarships, they use that free application for federal student aid, the FAFSA, to actually collect the information needed to determine a student's eligibility for aid. So the FAFSA is the starting point. It's always the starting point. And we want families to know that the application is free. There is no need to pay to have the FAFSA completed. It's a free application. It's offered by the federal government. It's free, and even assistance to complete the form is free. So
I know we see some ads out there in the newspaper for companies that will help you prepare the FAFSA. Not necessary.
Correct.
Okay.
Not necessary. There's plenty of free assistance to complete the FAFSA.
Okay.
Okay.
And so, Stephanie, parents and students can access the FAFSA through the website?
Yes, and actually that's what we encourage, Frank. The website it's quick, it's fast, it's easy, and it's very secure. So we encourage families to actually come to our website. They can begin by organizing to complete the FAFSA. We have steps 1, 2, and 3, so the website is laid out very logically. In step 1, we provide information about just how to get organized. You know, we offer a FAFSA on the web worksheet, and it's optional, but some people do like to write down their responses to the questions on the FAFSA, so we offer that worksheet. They can write down their responses and transfer that data to the web application. Also, we allow them to apply for a PIN here, which is a federal student aid PIN. It is the identifier of the student, so it will serve as the signature on the application. So we encourage students and parents to apply for a PIN. And they can do it here, or they can go to our PIN website, which I will show you in just a few minutes. Actually, and then the student would come to step 2 of the application to actually just fill out the FAFSA. It's very simple. It's approximately 100 questions. However, the system is very smart. It uses skip logic, so depending on how questions are answered, the student is allowed to skip other questions. So it's a very simple process. There's online help for every question on the FAFSA, and also there's a live chat feature so that a student can actually click on the live chat and talk to a CSR over the internet and have their questions answered.
That would be a customer service rep?
Customer service representative.
Wow, that's a great feature.
Yes.
And I don't want parents to be scared by the 100 question aspect of it, because
Correct.
much of it really is just some basic information that they need to gather about families, right?
Basic demographic information, income information, and like I said, not all families will see the 100 questions. Many of the families will only see an abbreviated portion of those questions based on how they answer other questions. So.
And I think your tip also on the worksheet is an important one that I found personally helpful as a parent, and as a high school principal, working with families, helping them over the years, having the worksheet beforehand and being able to research the information that you're going to need to pump in online is very important and helpful to fill out that worksheet and then have that available to you as you go to fill in the web information.
Correct. I know personally I like to write down responses to things and then transfer the information over, so it really helps the family to know what the question is, like you said, how to research and get the information needed from a tax return or bank account or whatever they may need to provide for the FAFSA.
Great. Okay. Now, once parents go through the process, the FAFSA process, how soon before parents and students, actually it's a student responsibility, right?
Correct. It's a student responsibility. However, for seniors, most seniors are considered dependent students.
Yes.
So parents would have to provide information on that FAFSA and sign the application. So again, it's both the student and the parent will be engaged in completing this application and having it submitted. Once the application is submitted, especially if it's submitted online, it takes 1 to 3 days for that FAFSA to be processed and the results provided by email to the student.
And so what kind of an email would they get? What kind of results would they see?
The student would receive an email that would let them know that their FAFSA has been processed, and that email would be a secure link to their student aid report, which is known as the SAR. And the student, on that student aid report, all of the data that was reported on the FAFSA will be displayed on the student aid report. Also, the student aid report will present the student's expected family contribution. That expected family contribution, or also known as EFC, is a number that is calculated based on a federal methodology. And that formula takes the information on the FAFSA, such as income, household size, and other information on that FAFSA, and it computes that number. That number it's just that, it's a number. It's not an amount. So some families see the EFC and they think, oh, I have to pay, this amount. But no, it's not an amount, it's a number. And schools use that number to actually determine a student's eligibility for aid, especially federal student aid.
Because much of the federal student aid is probably income-based then, or need-based?
Most of it is need-based.
Okay.
We do have, now some of our loans, like the unsubsidized federal loan, is non-need based, but our grants are all need-based. Our college work-study programs, that's need-based. So yes.
Now, when a parent and a student fill out the FAFSA then, and then they get their report back, how is the information then shared with the colleges that a student may be applying to?
That's a good question, Frank. Actually, the FAFSA, the electronic FAFSA will allow a student to list up to 10 schools on that FAFSA. Once that FAFSA is submitted, all 10 schools will receive the information reported on that FAFSA.
Oh, okay.
So that's how the school will receive the EFC number to determine what aid the student is eligible to receive.
All right, that's important information then.
Yes.
And now I know it's hard to generalize, but what will, on the average, families see for aid once they go through this process?
We receive that question all the time, Frank, and honestly, we don't have a grid or anything that we go by to determine what aid a student is eligible to receive. Once the information is submitted to colleges, like I said, the college will take the EFC number and determine the student's eligibility for aid. There are different variables used to determine aid amount, so the college actually has guidelines that they use to determine the types of aid and the amounts of aid the student would be eligible to receive. And there are lots of variables, so it just depends on what the student is eligible to receive. So I wouldn't be able to just tell you a dollar amount here because there are just lots of variables that schools use to determine the types and amounts of aid a student would receive.
Stephanie, are there any tools that might help forecast what a student might receive based on their individual situation?
Yes, absolutely. We have a tool called Fafsa Forecaster, which is, it complements the FAFSA because actually a student, even in their junior year, can use the Fafsa Forecaster. And I will bring up the homepage here for you. As you can see, it's set up in an ABC logical order, wherein the FAFSA is set up in a 1, 2, 3 logical order. And again, it prepares the family. They can prepare in Section A. In Section B, they actually complete the Fafsa Forecaster, which is an abbreviated Fafsa application. Not quite as many questions, but we gather enough information to determine the student's expected family contribution. And then at the very end of the Fafsa Forecaster, it presents what we call an aid eligibility page. And that page is sort of like an award notification that the school would send out to a student after the school determines the student's eligibility for aid. So it lists all of the federal aid that a student would be eligible to receive based on the information reported on the Fafsa Forecaster. Okay. Just to give families an idea of what the student may be eligible to receive. We have average cost of attendance so that they would know if the student goes to a school in state or out of state, approximately how much that would cost, and then how much aid the student would be awarded.
Well, I think it's a great tool because certainly college impacts on the family budget. So any tool that helps parents to plan for those costs down the road is important.
And then another great thing about Fafsa Forecaster is any data that the family enters in this application can then be transported to the FAFSA.
Oh, that's great.
So at the time the family determines to complete the FAFSA, the data will be carried over to the FAFSA. So they should
actually start with the forecaster?
They would start with the forecaster, exactly.
Okay, great. Okay, what about other resources that that your office has that might be helpful to families that are going through this process?
Actually, we have many brochures. The bookmark that you have there actually has the URL for the FAFSA on the website, information about the PIN. And so that's just a handy little bookmark that students can keep on hand to know where to go to begin the FAFSA process.
Great.
Also, there's a college preparation checklist. And actually, it's good for students to start out very early with that checklist because from grades 9 through their senior year, we tell them how to prepare for college. We recommend classes that they should take. We tell them, what tests they should take, such as the SAT and other tests that they should take. And it's just a really handy, very handy tool for students to use to know what to do at each step of their high school career to know how to prepare for college.
Great.
Funding Education Beyond High School is another guide that we offer, and it's a complete guide that goes into a lot more detail about the information that I've just shared here with you. So it talks in detail about the types of grants that the federal government offers, types of loans, amounts, how to complete the FAFSA. It just gives lots of information about the overall federal aid and application process. So
and Stephanie, how would one of our parents overseas access this?
They could go to Student Aid on the web,
okay,
and I'll bring that website up for you. Here it is. Families can come here, and actually that publication, they can just download and print it.
Perfect.
Or they can order a copy of the form.
Okay, great. And I think many of our schools probably have them available in the guidance office for families.
Yes, schools can also order the publication, and there's a special process for schools to order them. But yes, we encourage families to read through that guide because it's everything that they would need to know about applying for federal aid.
Great. And do you have a couple of other
yes.
resources there?
Needing money for college, again, another resource. It's an abbreviated resource, but it has a lot of the same information as Funding Education Beyond High School. And then also a bookmark, another, we call it the Hall Pass, that explains the Fafsa Forecaster and how to use that process.
Great. Well, these resources are all important to our families, and once again, available to families directly on the web or also in many of our counseling offices in our high schools around the world.
Exactly. And I just like to say, Frank, with the FAFSA, we encourage students to apply early. We encourage students to apply January 1st. So seniors who plan to go to school in the fall of 2010, we encourage them to apply January 1st, 2010 or very soon thereafter. And the reason we encourage students to apply early is because some funds are awarded on a first-come, first-served basis. Also, some state deadlines are very early in the year, so it's best to get that FAFSA filed as soon as possible. We encourage families to apply for the PIN early. Also, the PIN has been upgraded so that families can actually apply as they're completing the FAFSA and have that PIN displayed to them right online.
That's
instantly.
A great feature. That's a great feature.
Or have it emailed to them instantly. So, you know, the PIN is necessary for the signature. So students and parents will need a PIN. They need 2 separate PINs, and they apply for that PIN early, get the PIN, complete the FAFSA, sign that FAFSA, submit it early, and that's how they get started. That's how they get into the stream of receiving federal aid, state aid, and institutional aid.
Well, that is great advice. And the deadlines that you mentioned for different states, is that also available on your website?
Yes, it is. Every state has their own deadline, and some are very early in the year, some are a little later. But again, on the FAFSA website, there is a listing of all state deadlines. So there's a link where students can click on that link and find the deadline for their state.
Well, Stephanie, I really appreciate this information. I know it will be very helpful to our military families all over the world, and we'll work from our end too to encourage our students and our counselors and our families to make this available to parents. And the great help that you have said is available on the web, the live chats and other kinds of things, will, I'm sure, help them get through the process. So thanks for bringing your expertise here today to us.
Oh, you're welcome.
Well, it was our pleasure to have you here. You can find more about the college admissions process or financial aid on our website or on the U.S. Department of Education's website as shown on the screen. I'm Frank O'Gara. Thank you for joining us in this edition of The Chat Room.